In a previous video, we looked at the scenario of an Android app that was allowing a user to choose his or her hobbies from a set of hobbies using checkboxes. And that time, the checkboxes were in design in the activity underscore main XML. And now this time we want to add the checkboxes dynamically. So the checkboxes will be added from the Kotlin. So the code for this can be found at the URL seen. So it looks as it did before. We have 3 columns of checkboxes. The user can choose hobbies, antiquing, painting, and fishing, and hit enter, and they will list the hobbies. If any additional hobbies are added, photography, it will clear out. So we have a checkbox event, and the same thing goes if we clear out anything. Okay, so that is what it looks like in the AVD. Now that's not what it will look like in design because we are adding things dynamically. So here is the design here's the activity underscore main in sort of design view. We see that we have a linear layout that is horizontal. And then inside there, we have 3 linear layouts that are vertical, but there's no drop down here next to that I can expand this because there's nothing in these vertical layouts. So at this stage, these vertical layouts are empty. Then we have a button, and then we have a text view at the bottom to look at it. So let's also look at the code. So here's the horizontal linear layout. Here is the first vertical linear layout, and then the second and the third. So just linear layouts within linear layouts, but nothing in the inner linear layouts, the button and the text view. So let's look at code. Here we go. Okay, so connect the text view and connect the button from interface to code, the standard things. Okay, I have to get my hobbies from somewhere. I made a resource array over here in strings. So I made a list of a string array of hobbies. Okay. And back to main activity. Okay, so that is just making a code version of that resource array. And now here I'm going to, as I add my checkboxes, I am going to assign them IDs. So the last time we've added a bunch of widgets dynamically, they were radio buttons, and that was being added to a radio group. And we didn't have to worry about the IDs of radio buttons because all the action with radio buttons really takes place with the radio group. So they were the easiest thing to add dynamically. The checkboxes we sort of need to deal with on a more individual basis. And so we want to assign them ID. Now you can sort of loop over widgets and ask them if they're checkboxes. So we could, do it another way, but this way is relatively easy. So we're going to assign them sort of a systematic set of IDs, and that will make them easy to loop over. I sort of worried, like I didn't want to assign the IDs starting with 0 or anything like that. So in case those were sort of some kind of specially reserved IDs, so I made up some base, I'm calling it, sort of I'm going to start at 5,000 and move from there. So my IDs will be 5001, 5002, etc., things like that. Okay. So here I am getting a code version of the horizontal linear layout. This is the outer linear layout. And I am asking how many children does it have, which I know is 3 because I designed it, but I just wanted to be more generic in my code in case somebody came along and borrowed this code, but had 4 columns or 2 columns. So we're just determining dynamically how many linear layouts within this outer linear layout there are. Okay, so now I am looping over the hobbies array, and I am creating, instantiating a checkbox. I am giving it text of the string. So each, hiking, painting, so on. I'm assigning it an ID. This will make it easier to access later. And I'm using that base plus my counter I. So my I started at 0 and this was 5,000. So my ID started 5,000. I think there were 18 of them. So they'll go up to 5,017. Okay. Now I want to grab one of the inner linear layouts. So the checkboxes aren't going to be added to the horizontal linear layout, but to the vertical linear layouts that are its children. And so, and I want to divide up or divvy up the hobbies amongst the columns. So I'm going to the horizontal linear layout, which I call LL_hobbies. I'm getting its childAt, and then I'm doing a modular division. So I'm taking my counter I, dividing it by 3 and taking the remainder. So if I divide a number by 3 and take the remainder, it's going to be 0, 1, or 2. So I have the child at 0, the child at 1, child at 2, and it just sort of keeps cycling around. So I'm grabbing the child. I'm announcing that the child is a linear layout. And then I am adding to that column that I just got, I am adding the checkbox. And then I am also giving that checkbox a listener that we will look at below. It'll probably be this pretty much the same listener we had previously when these were made in design, except one difference will be now that we know them by ID. So we won't have to work with their names. We'll be able to work with their IDs, which is sort of one fewer steps. Okay, so here is the button click event. Blank out any hobbies that we might have had previously, or just sort of start a new quote, loop through the hobbies. We're grabbing I'm making a checkbox. So here is recreating that ID, the base plus the counter I, and then getting the corresponding checkbox, asking if it's checked, and if it is, adding it to our list. We're outside of the loop now. If the user has no hobbies, say get a hobby, otherwise show the list of hobbies. And then down here, so the real difference was here. This was a little bit easier because we're working with IDs rather than names. Here is our checkbox event. And since I'm outside of onCreate, I'm sort of remaking the text view, reestablishing the text view, and clearing it out on the checkbox event, which is a compound button. So we're borrowing from a sort of a larger set of things. The compound button, which the checkbox is an example of. Okay, so that is the end of the app I wanted to show you. Thanks very much.